After my boyfriend dumped me, I ended up getting involved with his twisted younger brother. That night, his brother looked at me, cigarette in hand. You two broke up? He asked. I was trembling uncontrollably. Just did. On the first day after breaking up with Alexander, he publicly announced his new girlfriend. Realizing he'd moved on so smoothly, I downed a bottle of red wine and went to his place for an explanation. But it was his brother, Sebastian, who opened the door. Sebastian stood there with just a towel around his waist, hair damp, probably fresh out of the shower. I took a sharp breath, feeling the heat rise to my face, coughed awkwardly, and asked quietly, "Is Alexander home?" Sebastian leaned lazily against the doorframe, his smile both warm and cutting. "He's not." His answer felt like a bucket of cold water over my head, leaving me shivering. It was already midnight, and Alexander still hadn't come home. Whose arms was he in right now? I clenched my fists, a fire of anger flickering inside me. Maybe it was out of revenge against Alexander, or maybe it was the alcohol, but I hugged Sebastian and brazenly asked, "Not going to let me in?" Sebastian clicked his tongue, a lazy tone in his voice. "Sister, look carefully. I'm not Alexander." "We broke up," I said. Sebastian looked surprised for a second before he opened the door. Once inside Sebastian's room, I sobered up a bit, a wave of anxiety washing over me. He looked innocent enough. Had I corrupted him? "Will you regret this?" he asked, his voice low and lingering. "Scared, sister? Was he teasing me? Huh?" He stopped laughing, leaned down to my eye level, and held my chin with his fingers, speaking softly, "Then please, sister, take pity on me." I coughed suddenly, unsure if it was because I was embarrassed or something else, my face turning bright red. But it turns out he didn't need my pity at all. Around midnight, Alexander returned home. He texted Sebastian, "Bro, you're finally seeing someone?" Sebastian chuckled, a faint dimple appearing. "Sister, I'm exhausted. Answer for me." I was nearly asleep, exhausted. But knowing it was Alexander on the other end, I suddenly felt energized again. I took the phone, lying on Sebastian's arm, and typed weakly, "Hmm." Alexander got interested. "Nice. When can I meet her?" "Anytime," I replied. After a year with Alexander, I knew he had a possessive streak a mile wide. Even if we'd broken up, he would never accept me being with someone close to him. The thought of him seeing me walk out of Sebastian's room in the morning made me smile. My smile must have woken Sebastian. He glanced sleepily at the messages and, in a raspy voice, asked, "Sister, you really replied?" I swallowed, feeling a bit nervous for some reason. He buried his face back in my neck, laughing softly. "Guess you're not tired enough yet." The next morning, Alexander's call woke me up. "I'm at your door. Come out." It took me a few seconds to register what he'd said. "Why are you at my place? Why wasn't he at his own?" I was waiting to see him make a fool of himself. His voice was as arrogant as ever, practically commanding me, "Isabella, from today, I'm your boss. Whenever I want to see you, you'll show up. Got it?" Boom. It felt like a bolt from the blue. Alexander had sunk to this level? Not only did he cheat on me, but now he was planning to torment me at work too. "Do you really have to, Alexander?" I bit my lip, my tone pitiful. He let out a casual laugh. "You dared to come after me, you'd better be ready to face all the consequences. Understand?" He really hated me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left his comfortable life to come to the company just to make me miserable. Well, that's life when the boss is his dad. He could play around however he wanted. I clutched the phone tightly, chest heaving with frustration. Sebastian was awake by then, smirking as he drawled, "Sister." The tension in the room was thick. Alexander's tone turned darker. "Who's with you?" I glanced at Sebastian, quickly covering his mouth. With him as my boss now, I couldn't afford to anger Alexander. I took a deep breath, trying to contain my frustration. "You misheard." Alexander gave a cold snort. "Right, hurry down." Thankfully, Sebastian's place was just a 10-minute walk from my apartment complex. If I hurried back now, Alexander might not suspect anything. I tossed the phone aside and quickly started dressing. But Sebastian held my skirt in place, refusing to let go. I was getting anxious, urging him to let go. Sebastian raised an eyebrow, running a finger along my earlobe as he whispered, "Sister, why don't you tell Alexander we're together? Or do you prefer to sneak around?" He paused deliberately, a faint smirk appearing on his lips. All the blood in my body seemed to rush straight to my head. Oh no, this younger brother knows exactly what kind of temper Alexander has. Is he trying to get me killed? If you don't open the door, Isabella, I'll come to your house myself. Alexander's threatening voice came from the other end of the call. Sebastian took my phone, casually putting it on speaker. He wrapped his arms around my waist, chuckling lazily. Why are you shaking, sis? Afraid Alexander will find out you spent last night next door to him? He added, his smile meaningful. I felt a wave of goosebumps and raised my voice suddenly. Stop it, last night was. Realizing the call was still active, I softened my voice, half guilty as I mumbled, it was an accident. Last night, what? Who the hell are you talking to? Alexander's voice on the other end was practically seething. Sebastian's demeanor shifted. Suddenly, he grabbed my chin, his gaze intense and brimming with madness. Sister, you're thinking of ditching me, huh? My thoughts went blank, and my breath hitched. I might have tangled with someone way too complicated. How could I shake him off after I'd made the first move last night? I didn't want to look like a jerk. Taking a deep breath, I offered a tentative solution. What if I pay you? Sebastian pinched the bridge of his nose, a resigned tone in his voice. Already thinking about that? Am I some kind of beast in his eyes? I mean, I stammered, finally steeling myself, I'll pay you. Just keep quiet about last night. He lowered his head, lighting a cigarette, and exhaled slowly. You're quite ruthless, sis. His tone was quiet, almost indifferent, but it made me feel an inexplicable pressure. A chill ran down my spine, and I bolted for the door. Just as I opened it, I saw Sebastian form a gun gesture with his hand. Bang! My eyes widened, and my back tensed instinctively. This is terrifying. I'm never seeing Sebastian again if I can help it. 10 minutes later, I dashed back to my building, where Alexander was standing by the entrance, looking exasperated. Where have you been this early? He asked, scrutinizing me. Exercising. His gaze traveled over me, landing on my wrinkled skirt. He frowned. Exercising in that? How'd it end up so wrinkled? Of course, it can wrinkle from that. Clearly, he's never heard of it. I pressed my lips together, rolling my eyes internally. What did you want to see me for? Trying to get back together? I asked, goading him on purpose. Alexander scoffed, half laughing. Am I that pathetic? I nodded. Not used to my attitude, he couldn't hold back a curse. Are you done pretending? As if I needed to put on an act in front of a jerk. I gave up and went blunt. What do you want, then? If it's nothing, don't waste my time. Alexander shoved one hand in his pocket, his tone cocky and full of pride. You've got 3 days to compile a detailed list of all the dresses ordered domestically and internationally over the past year and send it to me. Ha, I'm not your personal secretary. He chuckled humorlessly, bending down to look me in the eye, his voice menacing. Don't you get it? One word from me, and no company in the industry will hire you, esteemed designer. All you know how to do is use this trick to push me around. A sense of grievance started welling up inside me, and I looked down, eyes stinging. Alexander was outrageously arrogant. Defy me, and I have plenty more tricks ready for you. He's such a dog. I didn't bother arguing and grudgingly lowered my head. Just then, Alexander's phone pinged with a message. He glanced at it, a sly smile spreading as he turned on the speaker. A woman's voice came through, sweet and flirty. Alexander, I want to meet you for lunch today. Sure, he said, his smug gaze locked onto me, his tone teasing. Aurora Avenue, number 39. After hanging up, Alexander gave me a challenging look, smirked, and strutted off like he was all that. I got it. He came here just to flaunt. Unreal. I've seen people move on quickly, but never anyone this blatantly smug about it. Fine. Let's see what kind of angel Alexander's new girl is, that he just had to come flaunt her. After Alexander left, I put on my best poker face and headed to Aurora Avenue. Pushing open the door, I was met with a flood of sunlight. And there he was, slouched back in a booth, smoking with a lazy air. Almost like he sensed me, he looked up, his gaze cutting across the room to meet mine. For a moment, his beautiful, almond-shaped eyes seemed to curve in surprise. Sister. I froze in place, my legs going weak. Oh no, why did I run into Sebastian here? Instinctively, I backed up, but Sebastian took a long stride over, his large hand steadying me as I stumbled. I winced, softly protesting. He caught me firmly, his tone unhurried. There are people watching. I was starting to wonder. What had I done that night to leave him so misunderstood? Dazed, I let him lead me to a secluded corner. Just as my mind went blank again, I heard a familiar voice behind me, making my heart skip a beat. It was Alexander. Hey, bro, hiding out here? Why was he here? My heart pounded, and I took deep, frantic breaths to steady myself. Inspiration struck suddenly. I glanced at Sebastian, whispering, "Help me, don't let him find out I'm here." Sebastian moved slowly, his Adam's apple sliding up and down. Sister, when you ask for help, you need to act like it. I trembled, my lips quivering, my eyes welling up with frightened tears. Sebastian, please, help me. Sebastian paused, a satisfied smile spreading wider across his face. Holding me, he made sure to keep his back turned to Alexander. He leaned in close, his lips only inches from mine, and I barely dared to breathe. Really, bro? Alexander drawled, sauntering over with a mocking tone. Leaving me out to flirt with a girl? Even without looking, the sound of his voice sent a shiver down my spine. Sebastian toyed with my fingers, laughing lightly. She's more interesting than you. Oh? Alexander's interest peaked. Is she the girl you brought home, the one who's, talented? My scalp prickled at his insinuation. Sebastian responded with complete nonchalance, that's right. Come on, don't you think you should introduce me? Alexander asked, sounding mischievous. Sebastian brushed his hand through my hair, his tone leisurely yet commanding. Would you like to meet him? I was on the verge of tears, shaking my head like a drumbeat. Sebastian let out a wicked laugh, saying, "She's shy." Right after he spoke, I felt a chill run down my back, as if Alexander's gaze could pierce through me. Fortunately, the dim lighting in my disguise kept him from recognizing the woman on Sebastian's lap was me. I exhaled in relief, but Sebastian was determined to keep me on edge. He leaned close, whispering, "Sister, Alexander is getting suspicious." I could hear Alexander's footsteps getting closer from behind. He seemed about to sit down beside Sebastian. If he did, there was no way he wouldn't notice me. Panic spread through my mind, leaving me breathless. Seeing my fearful expression, Sebastian's excitement only grew, even his fingertips trembling slightly. He leaned in, his voice a teasing hook. "Why don't we let Alexander join us? What do you say?" My face went pale. I was about to be driven mad. Am I really that scary? Alexander complained. The girl hasn't even seen me, and she's trembling just hearing my voice? I'm outta here, he muttered in disappointment, turning to leave. Wait, Sebastian called, his eyes narrowing to an almost otherworldly intensity. Together? Together? What kind of twisted idea was that? I nearly jumped off Sebastian in fear. Alexander smirked. You really are forward, bro. Sebastian's gaze flickered with a cold glint. I meant, leave together. Alexander raised an eyebrow, muttering an "oh" as realization dawned. I breathed a sigh of relief. Sebastian gave me a sharp look, as if saying, "You owe me." Fine, I'll take the blame. The moment they left, I bolted out of the place as fast as I could. After all that, I finally made it back home. But within 5 minutes of collapsing on the sofa, I received a threatening message from Alexander. "Isabella, if you don't complete the task in 3 days, I won't hesitate to punish you." Was he serious? He's out gallivanting with his new girl and still has the nerve to squeeze his ex for work? Just because he's the boss's son, he thinks he's untouchable? Does he think he's really something special? Unbelievable. If he showed up right now, I'd smash his smug face in. Did you hear me? Alexander texted again. I flipped my phone over, stormed into my office, and threw myself into the task with new resolve. Time passed quickly as I sorted through countless designs, the ticking clock on the wall showing 5 a.m. by the time I noticed. And I'd only finished about 6% of the work. I was about to cry from frustration. Did I dig up Alexander's ancestral grave in a past life? Why is he still haunting me after we broke up? After a quick cry, I steadied myself and kept working. It's not that I couldn't leave Alexander's company. Recently, the big boss hinted that I was on the year-end promotion list. Barring any surprises, the position of design director would be mine. At this crucial moment, I couldn't let Alexander find any faults with me. The company respected our creativity and didn't require strict office hours. So, to fulfill Alexander's terrible demand, I locked myself in my house, working non-stop for 3 days without food or sleep. Finally, it was done. Without wasting a second, I headed to the company with dark circles under my eyes, my hard work in hand. Around 11 a.m., Alexander showed up with a gorgeous woman by his side. My mind went blank, and I instinctively tried to walk away. Isabella, where are you going? Alexander called out, noticing me immediately, stopping me in my tracks. He stood in the center with the woman, holding her hand arrogantly. I have an announcement to make. This is your new design director, he said in an uncharacteristically soft tone. Miss Olivia. The entire room froze, everyone's eyes darting toward me. I stared at him in shock. He glanced at me disdainfully, letting out a cold chuckle before taking Olivia with him to the executive office. The crowd around me started murmuring. I thought Isabella was getting that director position. How could Alexander bring in someone new? Yeah. Didn't he hint at the company event that Isabella was promising and that the company wouldn't treat her unfairly? Just saying, Olivia is supposedly Alexander's girlfriend. I saw them together a few days ago at Aurora Avenue. They looked pretty close. In that moment, my heart sank to rock bottom. Isabella, don't feel too bad. If you're really upset, why don't you go confront President Alexander? Yeah, you should definitely go ask him for an explanation. My coworkers surrounded me, each offering their advice. Unable to hold them back and wanting to get some answers from Alexander myself, I gathered my courage and headed to his office. When I pushed the door open, Alexander and Olivia were caught up in some intimate game. My mind blanked out for a few seconds. Grinding my teeth, I interrupted, President Alexander, I've finished organizing the documents you wanted. Olivia kept massaging Alexander with a sweet smile. Does that feel nice? Alexander let out a pleased sigh. Standing there awkwardly, I was completely ignored. After 10 minutes, I raised my voice. Alexander, the documents are done. He gave me a cold glance and scoffed, those? I don't need them anymore. After slaving over what was 10 days worth of work, racing against time to finish it in 3, he now tells me he doesn't need it? I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself, my voice urgent and shaky. Are you playing with me? Alexander didn't deny it. His smile grew, and he assigned me a new task. Isabella, you'll be in charge of introducing the design director to the team. Hearing my name, Olivia looked me up and down, an air of superiority in her gaze. She smirked, I've seen your work, it's average. Alexander pulled her close, adding with a smile, you've been invited to all those fashion shows since you were young. Isabella can't compare to you. I felt a lump in my throat. So, they thought they could freely insult others just because their parents had placed them in the fashion industry? I stubbornly looked at Alexander, hoping for a hint of regret, but there was none. He only seemed disappointed he hadn't crushed me more completely. Feeling utterly defeated, I took off my badge, slammed it down in front of him, and said, I quit. I left the company, and outside, it was raining, the raindrops pelted down, each one striking me as though it could penetrate my skin. I couldn't understand how these tiny drops could hurt so much, bending me over and forcing tears from my eyes. I huddled down in misery, and suddenly, an umbrella appeared over my head. Slowly looking up, I saw Sebastian standing there. Seeing my expression, his brow creased slightly. He leaned down, extending a hand to me. Time seemed to stand still. I sniffled, my lips trembling from the cold. "Why is it that every time I see you, I'm always in such a mess?" He didn't reply, simply placed my hand on the umbrella handle. "Hold it steady, sister." I looked at him in confusion. Sebastian took off his coat, draping it over me. The dampness in the air was immediately replaced by a subtle, cool fragrance. I stared at him, caught off guard. With a soft smile, he gently patted my head. "If you're still cold, just hold on to me." My heart skipped a beat. We started walking aimlessly, with no destination in mind and no thought of stopping. Strangely, the agitation in my heart gradually began to settle. I broke the silence. "Don't you have work?" "No classes today." I stopped in my tracks, feeling a bit silly. "You're a student? Is he even of age?" He seemed to read my mind, smiling nonchalantly. "I'm a graduate student, running a startup on the side." I sighed in relief. He chuckled again. "So, who bullied you today?" "Let me handle it," Sebastian asked, lighting a cigarette. His question brought back all my frustrations, and I stared at the red tip of the cigarette, feeling a surge of heat. "Can I take a puff?" "Just one. Be warned, it'll probably choke you." He tilted my chin up and, without warning, kissed me, letting me try that way. I started coughing, tears streaming down my face. "Enough, enough, it's too much." He chuckled, putting out the cigarette. I caught my breath, blushing furiously. "You're awfully shy, sister," he said, his gaze growing intense. "I'm not," I stammered, awkwardly trying to deny it. "If it weren't so noisy around us, I'd worry he might hear my wildly pounding heart." I rushed to change the topic, trying to drown out the racing in my chest. "I quit today." The words brought back a pang of sadness, and I found myself close to tears again. I was so naive, I admitted, my voice choked. I kept believing in all those empty promises from the boss. I practically lived at the company, giving everything I had. But today, the position they promised me went to someone else. The boss's son gave it to his new girlfriend. My voice grew thick with emotion, and the tears I had been holding back finally spilled over. "You know? The woman who replaced me, Alexander's current girlfriend. They showed up today looking so glamorous, and I was just barefaced." The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, my voice breaking as I vented. "She even insulted my work, saying it was average. I've won awards too. Who does she think she is?" "Isabella." Sebastian suddenly cut me off, his voice low and commanding. "Don't bring up other men in front of me." "But you asked me," I retorted, puffing out my cheeks and giving him a small glare. "Isabella." Right then, someone called my name. We turned to look, and there he was, Alexander. Dripping wet, he walked toward us. His face stiffened when he saw Sebastian, and his fists clenched. "Are you too close?" Sebastian and I answered at the same time. "Very close," I said, hoping to annoy him. "Not close," Sebastian replied calmly. I shot Sebastian a look of disbelief. He just kissed me, and now he's claiming we're not close? Figures, birds of a feather. Alexander let out a sigh of relief, looking reassured. "Isabella, are you purposely trying to rile me up?" "My buddy just said he's not that close to you, and he never lies." I stayed silent, secretly cursing Sebastian 100 times over. Alexander strutted over, placing himself right between Sebastian and me. "Let me hold the umbrella. You know, I don't like others touching my things." Sebastian turned him down flatly, his expression impassive, his gaze lifted just slightly, firm and cold. Alexander's brows drew into a deep frown. The atmosphere suddenly turned tense. I couldn't stand the awkwardness. "Fine, you two hold it yourselves and leave me out of it." Seizing their moment of surprise, I turned and ducked into a taxi parked on the roadside. Shortly after, I got a WeChat message from Sebastian. He wrote, "Sister, didn't you ask me not to slip up in front of Alexander? Was I obedient? Does he even understand timing? Right now, all I wanted was to make Alexander furious." I was just about to reply when a message from Alexander came in instead. "Isabella, stay away from Sebastian. He's from a proper elite family, there's no way he'd be interested in you. Stop fooling yourself." Just as I thought, a rich kid with other rich kid friends. I felt a pang of disappointment, like tiny insects were gnawing at my heart. It wasn't a deadly pain, but it drained me of all energy. I laughed bitterly, deleting the message I was about to send Sebastian. Instead, I typed out, "Sebastian, let's not see each other anymore. If we meet by chance, act like you don't know me. I'll find a suitable way to make up for any harm I may have caused you." Click sent. The seconds dragged by. Back home, after washing up and lying down, I checked my phone again. Still no reply from Sebastian. Did he just delete me without a word? I fiddled nervously with my fingers, considering testing things by sending him a money transfer. With only a dime left in my balance, I sent it to Sebastian. Almost immediately, he replied with a question mark, followed by, "This is your way of making it up to me?" I pressed my pillow against my face, cringing in embarrassment, wanting to dig myself a castle to hide in. No. As soon as I hit send, my screen showed, "You are not friends with this contact." He'd blocked me. An empty feeling settled in my heart, sinking me into a low, dark mood. My best friend, seeing me so down over video chat, invited me to stay a few days in Lavenderville. The place was beautiful, perfect for relaxing and gathering inspiration. After much persuasion, I took my sketchbook and went. In the end, I stayed at her place for over a month. By the time I got back to Rosetown, winter had arrived. The moment I walked in, my mom greeted me with gossip. "Hey, sweetie. While you were gone, some guy kept coming by looking for you." Curious, I couldn't resist asking, "Who?" She sounded thrilled. "He looked like a movie star, tall, slim, fair-skinned, really good-looking." Could it be Sebastian? But hadn't he blocked me? A strange feeling surged up in me, and I asked in a quiet voice, "Did he mention what he wanted with me?" "No, just said your phone was off and he couldn't reach you, so he thought he'd stop by." I had two phone numbers, one for work and one personal. While in Lavenderville, I'd only used my personal line, and only family and close friends knew that number. Quickly, I logged into my work phone. The messages had piled up. Most were casual check-ins from colleagues, with a few snide comments from Alexander sprinkled in. I scrolled to the latest message. "Coworker A, Isabella, when's your vacation over?" I replied, confused, "Vacation?" The response, "President Alexander said you were on leave." Me. What's he up to? I went straight to the point and messaged Alexander, "Why did you tell people I'm on vacation?" He hesitated in the typing box, then sent. I'd already quit. Why was I still putting up with him? So I shot back, laying an egg? "Alexander, me, or spawning?" He was left speechless, and within seconds, he called. "So, you went and took a course on cursing while you were away?" He was sarcastic, but just as I was about to throw a retort, he switched gears. "Get back here tomorrow." He paused, then added, "Olivia's not officially the design director. The two of you can compete fair and square with the spring 2023 collection." Got it. My mind struggled to keep up. How could he change directions so abruptly? I was about to clarify when he hung up with a loud click, leaving the busy tone as his parting message of irritation. Charming, right? Why had I ever liked him? At 1 a.m., I was yawning and ready to go to bed when my phone suddenly chimed. Rubbing my sleepy eyes, I glanced over and saw it was Sebastian. Instantly, I was wide awake, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. I hesitated for a moment before finally pressing the answer button. "Hello, Sebastian. You're his girlfriend, right? He's drunk on Aurora Avenue. Come pick him up." It was an unfamiliar voice on the other end. "Huh?" I paused, whispering, "Can I not go?" "Sure, I can just leave him here. Let someone else pick him up. No way. I quickly threw on some clothes, speaking in a slightly threatening tone, you'd better watch over him. If he's even missing a hair, don't blame me for smashing up your place. On the other end, there was a soft, amused chuckle. My mind was hazy, so I didn't dwell on it. In under 20 minutes, I was rushing to Aurora Avenue. I told the bartender I was looking for Sebastian, and he led me directly to a private room. Opening the door, I saw Sebastian sleeping soundly on the sofa, unharmed. I finally relaxed. Sebastian. I patted his back. Wake up, I'll take you home. In the light, his lashes fluttered like the wings of two tiny butterflies. He looked so beautiful. I couldn't help reaching out to touch him, and he slowly opened his eyes, his gaze teasing as our eyes met. Were you pretending to sleep? I glared at him, quickly pulling my hand back. He didn't say anything, just looked at me with those slightly reddened eyes, studying me closely. I felt a little uneasy under his gaze. Finally, I gave in, softening my tone. Where's your place? I'll take you home. Thinking for a second, I added, your place, not Alexander's. He closed his eyes and went back to sleep. Sebastian, don't fall asleep. This time, no matter what I did, he wouldn't wake up. I had no choice but to take him back to my place. After helping him get settled, it was already 3 a.m. Exhausted, I finally collapsed into sleep myself. When I woke up the next day, I glanced at my watch. I'd slept all the way until noon. Rubbing my head, I sighed with regret, feeling like I'd forgotten something. After freshening up, I passed by the living room, giving it a casual glance and nearly popped my eyes out of my head. At the dining table, Sebastian was sitting with my parents, chatting and sharing drinks. It was all incredibly harmonious. I froze on the spot, totally dumbfounded. What are you doing here? I ran over and grabbed Sebastian. What's wrong with you? My dad actually scolded me. Be more respectful to Sebastian. My mom tried to smooth things over. Isabella, why didn't you tell us when you got a boyfriend? We get along with Sebastian really well, so we're having a nice chat. But Sebastian cleared his throat, interrupting me. Isabella, sit down and join us for lunch. Who said he could call me that? So, Sebastian, when did you and Isabella meet? This was dangerous. I was about to make up something on the spot. But Sebastian jumped in, 7 years ago. He's even better at making things up than me. Was it my Isabella who chased after you? My mom's curiosity was off the charts. Sebastian shook his head. Auntie, I pursued Isabella. I had a crush on her. My mom beamed, practically glowing. Sebastian, you're wonderful, but your taste could be better. Mom, am I even your child? My dad, always quick to back up my mom, changed the subject. Sebastian, have another drink. I sighed, trying to stop him. Dad, don't let him drink. He had quite a bit last night. My mom teased, look at that, Isabella's already defending her future husband. The ease with which she called him son-in-law left me speechless. There was no explaining my way out of this. I resigned myself to it, propping my head in my hands as I reluctantly finished lunch. Later, my dad spent 2 hours grilling Sebastian about every detail of his family before finally letting him go. I dragged Sebastian back to my room, locked the door, and demanded, how could you tell them you're my boyfriend? Your mom said I was the first man you brought home, so they assumed. Sebastian rubbed his sleeve and, mimicking my tone, said, Sister, how can you blame me? You're clearly taking advantage, going along with it. He didn't even deny it. I was stunned, at a loss for words. The room felt stifling, maybe from lack of air. I was a little short of breath. Sebastian raised his eyebrows slightly, a barely noticeable vulnerability in his expression. Sister, you've been avoiding me for so long. Are you still planning to? You were the one who blocked me. And who told you to brush me off with money? He glared at me, his gaze oddly enticing. Forget it. Fine, baby, I admit defeat. My heart was melting. According to my horoscope, Aries this week would be blessed by the Z-Way star, bringing great fortune and a boost in romance. It was the perfect time for me to return to the office and make my big comeback. Today was indeed a fantastic day. Back at work, not only did Alexander stop bothering me, he even gave me ample time to prepare for the 2023 spring collection. During lunch, my coworkers gathered around me in excitement. "Isabella, we missed you so much while you were gone. You have no idea how condescending Olivia was. Working with her was a nightmare. Isabella, you have to go for that director position. You're the hope of the entire department." Suddenly, Olivia came strutting over in her high heels, radiating a queen on her throne vibe. "Who gave you all permission to gossip during work hours? But wasn't it lunch?" The group dispersed, defeated, while Olivia shot me a scornful look. "Isabella, you're going to lose miserably this time." I glanced back at her, voice calm. "We'll see who loses. Just wait and watch." She sneered. I shot back, "Has the company hired a dog? Because I swear I hear barking." After declaring war on my nemesis, I dove into designing the new collection with everything I had. I was working like crazy and came up with a forest theme, but it felt a bit too simple. Just as I was on the verge of despair, Sebastian showed up at my place. He opened the door, looked at the crumpled papers littering the floor, and without a word, he pulled me up from my chair. "Come on, let's take a walk." I clung to my sketchpad, exhausted. "I'm not going anywhere. Just a quick stroll nearby, and then you can keep working, all right?" He paused for a second, then added 3 words, "Come on, be good." How could I let a kid coax me like this? Reluctantly, I agreed. "All right, but only for a little bit." Sebastian and I strolled aimlessly, shoulders brushing, legs occasionally touching, so close it felt like we were a real couple. I felt my heart stir, and my face heated up. "Are you daydreaming about me?" he asked bluntly. Covering my face, I quickly denied it. "No way." "Isabella," he dragged out my name, paused, and asked, "Are you flirting with me?" My face turned bright red. He chuckled, gently pulling my hands away, his gaze smoldering. "I want to kiss you right here." "I'd be okay with that." "All right, I'll stop teasing." He chuckled, and he was absolutely getting under my skin. "After a song or two?" he asked, feeling a little better now. Honestly, getting some fresh air had cleared my head, but I was still stuck on the collection theme. I sighed. What theme could make the spring showcase a huge success? "Didn't you go to Lavenderville recently for inspiration? Got any ideas from that?" Lavenderville. His suggestion hit me like a lightning bolt. Gripping Sebastian's arm, I exclaimed, "I know. I can incorporate elements of ethnic style into the forest theme." "Smart thinking," he smiled, squeezing my hand. He held my gaze all the way back home, only letting go once he dropped me off. Before I knew it, winter was already a third of the way over. My Enchanted Forest series was finally ready in time for the Spring 2023 showcase. On the day of the show, the crowd was filling up with celebrities and socialites as I nervously waited outside. It was almost noon, and my main model still hadn't shown up. "Xiao Zhou, what's going on with Lilia's team? Did you call them?" My assistant was near tears. "Isabella, their phones are all unreachable." I whispered urgently, "What about backup models?" They all gave me excuses. Some said they're out of Rosetown, others claimed they're feeling unwell. It's ridiculous. All my regular models suddenly disappeared. This wasn't a coincidence. The crowd was growing impatient as Olivia strolled over. "Isabella, my 3D floral series wraps up soon, so your models are next. I can't wait to see the show." It suddenly dawned on me. She was behind this. With a smirk, I shot back, "Olivia, are you so afraid of losing to me that you'd stoop this low?" She feigned innocence, tossing her hair. "I don't know what you're talking about." As if. I didn't have time to bicker, so I decided to step in as the model myself. As for the men's look, I immediately thought of Sebastian. The phone barely rang before he picked up. "Hey, I'm in the shower, Sebastian, I need your help." "Sure." He didn't even ask what I needed him for, he just agreed. A warm feeling spread through me. Sebastian arrived at the venue 20 minutes later, hair still damp, looking less polished than usual but somehow more human. After we got our makeup done, we met up backstage. Watching him stride toward me, I finally understood what people meant by love at first sight. Surrounded by hundreds, my eyes were glued only to him. "Isabella, your model is so handsome." Even the seasoned stylists couldn't help but praise him. I fought to hide a grin, nodding absent-mindedly. "It's almost showtime." "Nervous?" His expression darkened as he looked me up and down, his voice low and intense. "Isabella, this dress is unacceptable." I was wearing a green vine-strapped dress, with a cinched waist and a sheer, flowy skirt that hinted at my legs beneath, admittedly, a bit flirtatious. "Put on a coat, please?" "No way. That would disrespect my work." He rubbed his temples, his voice both pained and restrained. "Never again." When we finally walked out together, the crowd was awestruck. Flash after flash went off as reporters shouted, "Over here, look this way." Sebastian and I shared a smile, the moment captured perfectly. We walked off stage hand in hand. After the event, Enchanted Forest was trending, receiving rave reviews across the internet. Fans flooded my social media, tagging their favorite studios. "At YZ Studio, take notes. This is what my girl should be wearing next time." "At DLRB Studio, collaborate with this designer and make my girl's beauty shine." Some even started shipping me and Sebastian. "Oh my gosh, they're perfect together. Please, get married right there. Let me die of happiness for these lovebirds." "They're even flirting on stage." He picked confetti off her collarbone. "Ugh, so cute, I'm dying." Sebastian saw the trending photo of us staring at each other and set it as his wallpaper. I glanced at him shyly and couldn't help but smile. Today has been the most relaxing day I've had in months. After Sebastian and I changed into more comfortable clothes, we wandered down the empty streets. He wore a mask, and his breath formed a frosty layer on his lashes. I took the initiative to wrap my arm around him. Being close made it a lot warmer. Just then, a sycamore leaf drifted down from a tree and landed right on my head. I stopped. He stopped, too. He reached over and brushed it off, and as I looked up, our eyes met. Fireworks burst in my mind. He blinked, then leaned in to kiss me. I lifted my head slightly to meet him halfway, my nose brushing against his. He paused for half a second, then came back for another kiss. Afterward, the air between us felt heated, almost electric. Blushing, I nestled into his chest, and he gently stroked my head. After he walked me home, I waited until he was out of sight, then bounced all the way back to my place. Isabella, out of nowhere, Alexander appeared. His gaze was icy, sharp as knives. "Do you think I'm a fool?" I guessed he had seen Sebastian walk me home. But I had nothing to fear. After all, I wasn't the one who had cheated. "We're already broken up, so what I do isn't your business." My eyes didn't waver as I stared back at him. "Not my business?" Alexander let out a scornful laugh, then roughly pinned me against the wall. "You approached me on purpose from the start, and now you're using me to get close to my brother. Do you even feel a shred of guilt?" My throat tightened, but I said firmly, "Believe it or not, when we started dating, I had no idea you were the boss's son." "Oh, please. You expect me to believe you didn't know Sebastian was my brother?" "Isabella, Isabella," he sneered as he grabbed my throat roughly, his voice dripping with venom. "How could I have fallen for someone as disgusting as you?" I struggled to breathe. Alexander let me go. His grip tightened, veins bulging on his arm. As my vision began to blur, he suddenly froze, releasing me as if in shock. I collapsed, coughing violently, my chest heaving like my heart might leap out of it. Alexander had lost his mind. He was really trying to choke me. Trembling, I shrank back from him. Seeing me in that state, his furious expression cracked a little. "Isabella, stop this nonsense. I really like you. Can't we just get back together?" I looked at him coldly and nearly laughed. Last year, my company had sent me abroad for work, where I met Alexander, and we ended up dating for a year. But once I got back, I went to my boss's house to deliver some documents, only to find out Alexander was his son. At that moment, Alexander had flown into a rage. He assumed I had targeted him on purpose, insisting we break up and ignoring my every attempt to explain. That very day, he made his new girlfriend public. Yet despite jumping straight into a new relationship, he couldn't seem to leave me alone. Every day, he tried to make my life difficult, going out of his way to torment me. And now he tells me it was just because he was mad at me? Now he says he likes me? This kind of affection, I wanted nothing to do with it. Seeing his guard down, I subtly slipped my hand into my pocket and dialed my emergency contact. A moment later, Sebastian appeared, out of breath. He narrowed his eyes at Alexander, his expression dark and dangerous, as though he was barely holding back from lashing out. But he didn't. He stepped forward, shielding me, his voice cold as ice. You have a problem? Take it up with me. Don't touch her. Sebastian, you're revolting. You know full well Isabella was my girlfriend. Sebastian scoffed. You already broke up. Or is she supposed to mourn for years just for you? Alexander slammed a fist into the wall, cursing viciously. Sebastian continued, you wouldn't have even met Isabella if it weren't for me. You know she met me first. Enraged, Alexander yanked me towards him, but Sebastian stomped down hard on his hand. Try touching her again. Alexander fell back, his face dark. Sebastian was ice cold, emanating an intimidating aura. Sensing they were about to fight, I wrapped my arms around Sebastian. Sebastian, let's go. I don't want to see him anymore. In that instant, regret flooded Alexander's face. As we walked up the stairs, he called out my name. I thought he was going to continue pestering me, so I didn't turn back. But then, in a quiet voice, I heard him say, Isabella, I'm sorry. I froze for a second, and the weight of all the resentment I'd been carrying faded. Alexander and I were done for good. After I quit that company, I was invited to join a prestigious luxury brand as their creative director. Ironically, Olivia, Alexander's ex, came in for an interview at my new company. The moment she saw I was the interviewer, the smile on her face froze. Isabella, what are you doing here? My assistant, taken aback, asked, You know our CEO Isabella? Not really, I said indifferently, echoing the dismissive words she'd once used to humiliate me. Olivia, right? I've looked at your portfolio. It's average. Her face turned red on the spot. My assistant frowned. Why are you upset? Getting feedback from Ms. Isabella should be an honor. Upset already? I handed her a tissue. When you used your connections to steal my previous role and tried to humiliate me, I felt 100 times worse than you do right now. Turning away, I strolled out of the office, feeling refreshed, and headed to Sebastian's bar. Aurora Avenue, number 39. Inside, Sebastian was seated by the window, wearing a white shirt, his long fingers pressed against a book, jotting down notes with his other hand. The warm afternoon light filtered through the window, casting a gentle glow around him. As if sensing my gaze, Sebastian looked up. He smiled, his eyes twinkling with warmth, like tiny sunlit fragments. I tilted my head, waving to him. Sebastian. He grinned, dimples deepening, and tilted his head to match mine. Hey, sis. I ran over and hugged him tightly. Holding me close, he started telling me a story of a secret love. She was my senior, and I had a crush on her for 7 years. I secretly kept her photo in my wallet, but a friend found it and ended up dating her. All I could do was watch her from a distance. Sebastian, who was your senior? I asked, both nervous and hopeful. He whispered my name, Isabella, and then pressed a tender kiss to my lips. I've loved you for 7 years. I'll love you for a lifetime. I wrapped my arms around his neck, kissing him back, thinking if I had a tail, it would be wagging uncontrollably right now.